Good evening, bonsoir. My name is Hélène Giroux and I'm the director of the Wakefield Writers Festival. On behalf of the festival, we welcome guests on the unceded territory of the Algonquin people. We recognize their strength and wisdom, their stewardship of the land and water, the plants and the animals. Together, let us commit to learning about and learning with Indigenous peoples with respectful thanks, advocacy, and action towards reparation and reconciliation. In Conversation launches this year's WritersFete. It's our 9th edition, and does so with two of Canada's best writers, powerful and remarkable authors Anne-Marie MacDonald and Elizabeth Hay, with host Lucy van Oldenbarneveld. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. And we're really delighted to welcome our online audience from across Canada. And a special hello to Carolyn McCaskey and Sylvia Spring, who are joining us from Salt Spring Island. They're ex-Wakefielders and much loved. As I said before, this is the festival's 9th edition. Our theme this year is Truth in Our Time. We hope to show how the literary and the performing arts can contribute to significant change to addressing some of the really pressing social and environmental issues that are really critical to all of our future. Tonight, with Anne-Marie and Elizabeth, illuminates our interconnectedness with each other and with our planet, with reflections on gender, class, dreams unrealized, friendship, sex, and sensuality. Tomorrow evening, we partner with Theatre Wakefield for In Their Own Words, a verbatim theatre evening, which will present 6 short verbatim theatre plays that will address a variety of social justice issues. In concert within Their Own Words tomorrow evening, we partner with the Imagine Action Youth Council and their local youth who've created these larger-than-life superheroes that will be in the studio. And the title of their art exhibit is Imminence: Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And these superheroes are asking us to effect positive change in the world. On Friday, we examine the power of local journalism and celebrate our wonderful Lowdown, the Lowdown to Hull and Newsback, our community and regional newspaper, who is celebrating their 50th anniversary in an era when many community newspapers are shutting down. Bravo. Saturday, Thompson Highway and Tonche Redverse explore Indigenous culture, pride, and gratitude, and how they approach their own authenticity and joy to create community and to unite people together. That's on Saturday evening. We close with a tribute to Stephen Huyton, the writer, the poet, the spontaneous giver who passed away last year too early. His friends, both literary and musical, will pay tribute to him. Rhonda Douglas, Angie Abdu, Wayne Grady, David O'Mara, Ginger Farran, and Chris Brown. There are still tickets available for tomorrow evening and for Stephen Huyton. We wouldn't be able to offer the festival without the steadfast and generous support of our many sponsors and funders, the Canada Council for the Arts, the Canadian Heritage, the English Language Arts Network, la MRC des Collines de l'Outaouais, Culture Outaouais, et la municipalité de LaPeche. Thanks to all. As well, our thanks who've made this year's festival possible. Al Connors, live stream production. Greg Brown, sound engineer. John Schmidt, digital marketing. Elise Marlane, graphic design. Pamela Scobie, volunteer coordinator. All of our exceptional volunteers. Biblio Wakefield Library, Centre and Centre Wakefield LaPeche. Our bookseller, Jim Sherman of Perfect Books Ottawa, who's been with us for a number of years. Thank you, Jim, for being with us again. And 2 extraordinary colleagues without whom the festival wouldn't be possible, Christine Corcoran and Peter Gillis. Thank you. And please join me in a big hand for our wonderful pianist, Deborah Thompson. Deborah, where are you? It's now my pleasure to introduce Lucy van Oldenbarneveld. Until recently, Lucy co-anchored the flagship newscast CBC Ottawa News at 6. Her work was recognized with a Canadian Screen Award nomination, a Gemini nomination, and the Gold World Medal for Best Talk interview program at the New York Festival. Lucy is now pursuing new life dreams, that of storyteller, actress, theater producer, and world traveler. Her one-woman show, Me, Vivian Leigh, and the Roller Rink, tells her story of growing up in Hamilton during the steel strikes, a recession and overwhelming patriarchy that ruled everywhere, except at the local roller rink. Lucy, we are delighted to welcome you back to WritersFete. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that very generous introduction, Hélène, and hello and welcome, everyone. Great to see you all. Sold out, I might add. Hélène, thank you for this amazing event that you and your team have created over these many years. It is just one of my favorite festivals coming up to Wakefield, and this especially tonight. You really created this great environment, and we have two authors just at the peak of their game that we have a chance to talk to today. So, you are in for an amusement, a literary excursion, and a great conversation. Then there'll be a chance for you to ask questions, and we'll continue the conversation after the break. So, question: how many of you have already read the books? Look at you all! What a bunch of keeners! That is fantastic. Well, then we don't have to worry too much about spoilers, then, do we? Oh, we be careful. Well, be careful. No booing. These two books, as you know, are very different. Fane by Anne-Marie MacDonald is a huge, sweeping Victorian tale full of twists and turns, a sprinkle of magic. It was worth the carpal tunnel that I got, lifting that 722 pages. Totally worth it, you guys. Then Snow Road, Station by Elizabeth Hay, is quiet, atmospheric, and has been described by Anne-Marie MacDonald on the back, exquisitely etched coming of middle age story. Yes. I see some of you in this room might be able to relate to that theme. We're all in it together. But these two books are also very similar. In them, we read themes of women's friendship, feminist character, courage, and resilience. Perhaps in both, we see themes about struggling to find peace with yourself, with the world. And we'll have a chance to ask and just clarify all of that. You already know these two brilliant authors, but let me tell you a little bit more. Anne-Marie MacDonald. It was 1997. I was traveling in Thailand and needed a book. At one of the bed-bug-infested places I stayed was a used book stand. So for 25 cents, I picked up this huge paperback, which would get me through the next few weeks. I'd never heard of it, but it was Canadian. Fall on Your Knees, it was called, and it blew my mind. And yes, I still owe you the royalties on that, Anne-Marie. I have to say, I missed a lot of that trip because I was so immersed in that story and in that book. I couldn't tear myself away. Fall on Your Knees, of course, went on to win the 1997 Commonwealth Writers' Prize for Best First Book. It was an Oprah book pick in 2002, which, of course, was a life changer for any author. Anne-Marie has won the Governor General's Award for Drama. She's been a TV host and actor. She was named an Officer of the Order of Canada for her contributions to the arts and for her advocacy of the LGBTQ+ and women's rights. Fane is her fourth novel. Elizabeth Hay won the Giller Prize for Late Nights on Air, a book about living and working in the North. Yeah, go for it. Living and working in the North, specifically the CBC, and I have yet to meet a Northerner in my travels who has not read it. Absolutely everyone has read it, and I know everyone in this room has read it. She, of course, worked for the CBC in the North and continued after she came back south. She is, of course, our Ottawa hometown hero, and pretty sure there was almost a parade when she brought that Giller home. We're just so proud. Her memoir, All Things Consoled, about the last years of her parents' lives, won the Hillary Weston Writers Trust Prize for nonfiction. Her story collection, Small Change, was shortlisted for the Governor General's Award for fiction. I've been so lucky also to interview Elizabeth over the years for CBC Radio and Television and talk about her incredible work, one achievement at a time. Snow Road Station is her 6th novel, and for many of us who have those midlife questions, hopes and doubts, she is still our voice. So we have these two women tonight. I mean, you know. You have come to the right place. Elizabeth, maybe we can get you to start us off with a reading tonight, if you want to come on up. And don't trip. Somebody is going to trip tonight on this. Not us.
Lucy, thank you. I think this microphone is placed, we're about the same height, right? Okay. And Hélène, thank you. Everybody involved in this festival, we're very grateful to. It's a great thing. And delighted to be here with Anne-Marie and Lucy. So I'm just going to do a little reading, but I'll give a short introduction too. So Snow Road Station is about Lulu Blake. She's an actor in her 60s, weather-beaten, rarely fooled, I think, still sexy. She's not a star. She's a working actor who's had some success. And sort of through the back door, she lands a formidable, daunting, hugely challenging role at the NAC. She plays Winnie in Samuel Beckett's Happy Days. And this is the role that's virtually a 2-hour monologue where Winnie is buried up to her waist in sand in the first act and up to her neck in the second act. That's what Beckett does to Winnie. And so several performances into the 3-week run, Lulu is forgetting her lines. So the book begins with her escape from the burial mound into the night. She makes a winter's night journey, if you like, back to Snow Road Station and to her old friend Nan. And on the way, she pulls over to the side of the road for a moment. A thick curtain of snow had been climbing her hotel window in Ottawa for weeks. And now something else flashed white before her eyes, the sign-out sheet on the call board she had forgotten to fill in. No one involved in the play knew where she was right now. She hadn't even told the stage manager about the wedding. I could walk into the dark woods and never be seen again. Well, she would phone Sal once she got to Nan's, tomorrow or the next day. In the meantime, being AWOL might have its charms. In her headlights, thousands of snowflakes were whirling in all directions, an exotic tumble, sallying this way and that in the buoyant air. She reached up and angled the rear view mirror to take a look at herself. A lot of mileage, she thought. Or these days, a lot of kilometerage. A lot of kilometerage in that face. Honey, you're a mess, she said out loud. The plain truth stared her in the eyes. We don't remember things, she thought, and it's not because we've forgotten. They're in hiding, waiting to leap out and do us in. Rolling her window shut, Lulu pulled back onto the road. Soon the cedars on her right gave way to big old maples around a sugar shack. The sight was something from an earlier time, and for her, always ushered in the beginning of Snow Road Station. Snow was a man. The road was named after its surveyor, not the weather, a fact that disappointed at first, until the idea of it became more tolerable, or at least inevitable, and the name's meaning expanded all over again. Snow Road Station was an arrival, a departure, a long wait, a place of rest, a stoppage, yet a road. The name was like a poem, she thought, or a 3-act play. A passenger arrives in the snow with her southern accent and broken heart. Her son and his girlfriend come to visit, weighed down by their pressing problem. A decision is made. People part. The station closes. The railway tracks get torn up. No more train whistles to listen for. But the name persists. Years ago in New York, a young actor came to her for voice lessons, and Lulu asked her where she was from. "You wouldn't know it," the girl replied. "It's just a little place in Ontario." "Try me, darling." Snow Road Station, came the answer. A farm girl from one of the maple syrup families that still maintained a sugar bush of thousands of trees. There had been a time when more maple syrup was shipped from Snow Road Station than from anywhere else in Canada. Lulu had hugged her like a long-lost friend. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Liz. One question for you to kick things off before we go to Anne-Marie. You chose to go back to the character, Lulu Blake, which we first met in His Whole Life. Why did we need to learn more about Lulu Blake? What was it about her that made you want to revisit that character?
Well, you can hear? Good. Well, I loved Lulu Blake. I loved her, and I actually had no intention of going back to her, because once I finished His Whole Life, I thought that was it. Glad to say goodbye to all the work and labor of that novel. But a publisher, my British publisher, suggested that there was more to write about in Lulu. And he too also thought that Snow Road Station was a great title. So I at first resisted and then warmed to the idea as a few glimmers of what I might do came about. But I think the reason Lulu is worth going back to is because she is this woman in her 60s, and who is, as I said in the introduction, sexy, unfooled, independent. She's never married. She has no children. She's made her way in life in this precarious profession of acting. And she's still doing it at 62, doing it but fearful that she's losing her grip. So I think that there's a lot of potential in a character like that. Somebody who is open to life and open to performance, open to revealing herself. There's a lot of potential in an older, sexy woman for drama and romance and trouble. I mean, the trouble she might get into, perhaps even trouble she might cause, but more with Lulu, it's the trouble she might get into. So that's and then Lulu really is the central character. Everything is seen from her point of view.
Yeah, absolutely great. A lot of potential in older women. We love that. Thank you. Thanks, Liz. And we'll get back to Lulu in throughout our conversation. Anne-Marie, can I turn things over to you for a reading? Sure. Yay!
Thank you very much. I loved that reading. Just beautiful. Such a treat to be read to, really, isn't it? So I'm going to read to you from Fane. It's the late 19th century, We're on a baronial estate, which is situated on a vast windswept moor that straddles the border between England and Scotland, where dwells a widower, Lord Henry Bell, and his adored only child, Charlotte Bell. I just thought we'd start at the beginning and see how far we get. I have a book stand here. I'm fine. As a courtesy to those whose sole aim in opening this book be to obtain an answer to the question most often posed me, to wit, what is the secret of long life coupled with mental vigor? And to spare them fruitless perusal of these pages, herewith my answer: I am immortal. The latter assertion may cause the reader to question my claim to mental vigor. But where is the proof that I am mortal? I have not yet died. And if you are reading this, neither have you. Father, I have an idea. I was peering through his magnifying glass at the feather of a Vermifejora rubifortan. I had plucked it from amid a frowsy heap, the which a housemaid might mistakenly sweep from the desktop into the dustbin and expect to be forgiven, but she would not be forgiven. Let us travel to the nesting ground of this bird. And where might that be? A sheer rock face jutting from the sea, it forms the extremity of an unnamed archipelago in the southern Antipode and is visible at night owing to the phosphorescence of the guano with which it is liberally daubed. He squinted, took the red feather between the points of his tweezers, and applied to its quill a drop of glue no bigger than a grain of sand. Father, why is that amusing? It is not amusing per se. Rather, in point of fact, tell me, have you been memorizing again? Father, that which you term memorization is to me involuntary. I read, I retain. 'Tis no strain to me. I say, how are the L's coming along? Oh, I've long since tackled the M's. Have you indeed? Dear old Menander. Shall I fetch him now, and you may quiz me? He smiled. I fear I'm apt to be woolly-headed at this hour. Very well then, Father, tomorrow, depend upon it. I shall, of course, be delighted. Do bear in mind, however, there is no great hurry. The ancients have been with us for over 2,000 years. I dare say Mino will keep till Monday. We were in his study. He in his oaken armchair, I perched on a stool at his side. About us on the desktop, a tableau of partially remembered birds was taking shape from the frizz of bits and beaks and bones. Here a headless robin, there a legless lapwing. He inserted the red feather into the wing of our latest specimen, and I watched as the lamplight played at the edges of his spectacles. Father, what is light? Why, it is a property of the sun, and of fire, of course. But what is it? Why, I shouldn't think it qualifies as a thing, per se. Then how do we come to perceive it? He paused, but did not reply. I asked, what is color? Ah, color is a property of light. He replaced the cork on the glue bottle. Aristotle believed light to be a disturbance of the air, but Democritus said it is made of bits called atoms, and Lucretius said atoms rain down from the sun, in which case the sun must be running out of atoms. What do you think, Father? Oh, I should think the sun has plenty of atoms in reserve. But if not an infinite number, the sun must one day extinguish like a lamp. Pass me the... I handed him the sandpaper thimble. Thank you. And when the sun dies, so must life on earth, save perhaps whatever giant worms ply its bowels and serpents swim the uncharted depths of its oceans. Does not this give one pause, Father? I shouldn't worry. I expect the sun's atoms are replenished by a celestial process. Of course. Thank you, Father. I am relieved. To what process do you refer? He let out a breath that was half a chuckle and shook his head. I see I shall have soon exhausted my store of knowledge. Certainly not, Father. No one can touch you for birds. He smiled. In addition to being my principal companion, Father was my teacher. He gave me the benefit of the education he had himself received as a boy, first from his tutor, an elderly scholar whose nose dripped perpetually, and then at Strathmore School. I entertained reveries wherein I was myself his boyhood friend. The two of us stoical in the face of canings by masters and bullying by older boys. Father taught me to debate, and many were the evening we spent working away at our ornithological specimens whilst refuting and affirming by turns. Ought Caesar to cross the Rubicon? Why? Why not? Ought Alexander to turn back at the Indus? What Father lacked in Euclid, he made up for in philosophy. Thus he instilled in me the virtues: courage, justice, piety, temperance, wisdom, and containing all of these, truth. Thus I knew Latin, logic, rhetoric, and Father had managed even to insert into my head a tolerable grasp of Greek. As Thales of Miletus might put it in our own day, what is the most difficult thing in life? Answer: to know oneself. I, however, knew myself fine well. I was the Honorable Charlotte Bell of the D.C. Defane. I possessed several intervening names waiting to be brought out of storage and packed in trunks for the trip to court when I should be of age, health permitting. For my father was Lord Henry Bell, 17th Baron of the D.C. Defane, peer of Her Majesty's realm of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. For now, however, my condition kept me apart. Thank you.
Thank you for that. How great to have a trained actor and a trained radio broadcaster here with us to do these readings. Henry, so many questions for you about research and the language that you use and how the science that is running throughout. But my question is, you are also revisiting a place that you have written about before, late 19th century Scottish family with secrets. What appeals to you about that?
It wouldn't have anything to do with my own background. My father's heritage was Scottish. My mother's people were Lebanese immigrants. And there is something about that world. I won't call it a duality because it was a blend, it was a mix. And the play you're referring to, Balmoral, A Natural History, thank you for knowing that, is set on the northeast coast, just outside of Edinburgh. And it does feature an amateur scientist named Pearl MacIsaac, and she is scouring the coast for fossil evidence of transitional species. And her brother, of course, says, why not search the family plot? So these are themes that have been with me for a long time. You're absolutely right. And transitional species, and transitional and marginal, and both and everything and neither and all. That kind of sounds like what people are grappling with now, too. But yeah, that's why the estate straddles two countries, and I know that goes back to my own formation as a human being as well.
And you talk about transitional species. You tell me about spoilers. How do we navigate this? What can you tell us about Charlotte? What are we allowed to know? What's happened to now? What can you tell us?
Yes, I'd like to avoid spoilers, even though I was very frank when this book came out, because there are some very mortal, very real. There's some very mortal and very real subject matter in the book, right? My intention is to present that in a way that allows the reader to approach different people and different bodies and different situations with a sense of invitation and discovery. Charlotte has a condition. The nature of it is kept from her. The reader will discover what this condition is. I think, what is it, page 73 or something? Yeah. So it's not held back. Yeah. That said, I don't want to ruin anyone's first 73 pages, so I won't say anything. But the idea being that Charlotte is not aware that she carries any sort of abnormality. And you know what? She doesn't. It's perspective. It's perception. It's a cultural construct. That's my opinion. And yeah, so she's normal. And but I am passionate about science and the history of medicine and the history of science and magic and religion and what are the lenses through which we see the world. And always, there's never just one lens, you know, it's always mixed.
And through this, we see how Charlotte comes to learn things about herself and about the struggle she faces as a woman and about her discovery, and then all of the forces that seek to, you know, that keep her from thriving.
For her own good, of course.
Yes.
Always for her own
Yes.
good. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we'll get back to that because that is a central theme, and I think that there are similarities in what we're exploring here. Liz, why don't we talk more about Lulu Blake? 62 years old. She's got regrets and she's got doubts. What does that represent to all of us? Where she's at in life and where she finds herself, driving towards Snow Road Station on that snowy night you talked about, after forgetting her lines.
Well, what Lulu needs in the immediate first pages of the book is a prompter, and the prompter is a bit slow, giving her lines, and she forgets her five times. Actually, she has 5 moments when she muffs her lines. So what that gives her is a complete sense of failure. And as she makes her nighttime journey, the journey is tinged and colored by that sense of failure. The thing is that she's in a play by a playwright, Samuel Beckett, who was a master of failure. He was fascinated by failure. So the play and Lulu, the role she's playing and who she is are dovetail. And she makes the journey to Snow Road Station to her old friend Nan and Nan's family. Her brother, Lulu's brother, also lives in Snow Road Station. And I think what you realize is that what she needs more than a prompter, what Lulu needs, is actually a supporting cast of characters. And that's what she finds in Snow Road Station. So the supporting cast of characters are fascinating too. But that gives her a bigger world, a new world that she has traveled to.
But you know, I think for many of us, and I know, Anne-Marie, in Adult Onset, you also talked about this transition in life and where we're at and where we're facing, a crossroads in middle age. There's a lot of disappointment and illness and loss, but they are finding a way to navigate it through. Lulu with her supporting cast, in not just on the stage where she's mostly alone, but in her life. So how does she end up navigating that so she finds the path back to hope and optimism?
I don't think there's a path to hope and optimism. I mean, there isn't one. The road to Snow Road Station is very uphill and down, and the momentum in Lulu's life is downhill and uphill and downhill and uphill. It's a continual movement. There's no destination called hope. It's just something that we encounter at times and then lose, re-encounter and lose. All of this is a movable feast. These things like hope and confidence and so on. They ebb and flow. And so I think what happens with Lulu in the book is that she's experiences a huge loss of confidence. There are things that happen to her in real life, not on stage, that also rob her of confidence. And she continues on. I mean, again, this was Beckett, right? Samuel Beckett, who fail again, fail better. There's no achieving of something that stays still in life.
I can't go on, I'll go on.
Yes.
Yes. So, I mean, when you talk about that, and is that part of Lulu finding peace with herself and peace where she's at? Because she goes on this quest to find that, okay, it might not be perfect, I might not be a star, but I end up okay.
Well, she's never made it big. And that's the case for most of us. We don't make it big. Even writers who are great writers don't necessarily think they're great, especially because there are always people eager to tell them they're not. So there, but she has never given up in her life. She's always pursued acting in one form or another. I think she realizes that maybe she's 62. Maybe there can be some giving up within the not giving up. There can be, some ambitions, some hopes that she allows to fall away. But then the thing about Snow Road Station, I think, is that it's much richer. It's full of color and landscape, people, love, a certain amount of betrayal, then more love. And that is a life that is richer perhaps than what she had in her acting.
Mm. Just to stay here for one more moment, Anne-Marie, as I mentioned, in Adult Onset, you also, this character was in her 40s at the time, but also grappling with change and where she was at in life. What is the lesson? I mean, it's 8-9 years removed from that book. What has been learned? We're looking for the wisdom. What have you learned?
My wisdom?
Yes, please.
I guess, I always come out with more questions at the end. I think that was my wisdom. I'm happy that you bring up Adult Onset, especially in this context, because this is also a woman in the riptide of life. She's in her 40s, but she has very young children and very elderly parents. And also, she is menopausal. You know what? I don't buy the perimenopause thing. It's menopause. Oh, it's a process, and then it's over. Thank God it's over. And there are gifts in it, right?
Oh, really?
As I said it, I thought, what? Where are the gifts? Anyway, yeah.
Anyway,
I've read all the books.
digress.
I can tell you about the gifts. And I said, no, I'm glad it's over. So yes, she's menopausal. And that is really, you're standing where, okay, there's all of these things going on. And is there a moment for me to be with myself? Yes, there is. It's called this the undertow of old trauma that you thought you'd already dealt with. That's what you get to have. That's your time with yourself. So that was my experience, and I tried to write about it, actually. That's what I tried to do in Adult Onset. Yeah. And for me, when I think of Adult Onset, I do think about the autobiographical aspects of it, and there are many, but there are very few things that I actually lift from life and say, I just got to put this in here because that happened. And you know what it was? And I can't believe I'm sharing this with you. It must be because we had that reckless dinner and talked about the North. Okay. You know that scene? Maybe if you've read the book. There is a scene where Mary Rose goes to the gynecologist because of uterine fibroids. It's so boring. And, okay, so there's two nurses, and there's the lubricated wand, and it's inserted, and you're looking around, and they're going, oh yeah, those fibroids are in a really bad place, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And here you can mop up now, and, oh, and the doctor's name is Goldfinger. And you know what? I did not say a word because I thought, this poor man has heard it all. I had requested a woman, didn't get a woman, but he turned out to be fantastic. He was better than the other gynecologist, and this is a real person. I don't know aspersions. She's a wonderful doctor. She's a gynecologist. Her name is Dr. Steele. But so Goldfinger. And so then he goes out, and the nurses give me the thing and mop up, and then they presented me with a copy of my last novel to sign. And I did not even have my pants on. Sure. Really? Really. So, no idea what that has to do with wisdom. But yeah, that happened, and I had to weave it into the book. But really, standing with all of those things coming at you, it's like you're not just a person. You are like some kind of plinth at a crossroads. Not even a crossroads, where many roads meet, right? So this starts to resonate with pagan old female wisdom. It's like, yeah, just drive on through me. In all directions, and I'll keep it all going.
I'll keep it all going, and all together.
All together, and when I have a moment, I will try to reprocess the trauma. And then we go forward into something that perhaps feels like,
yes,
oh, this is more placid. I can just breaststroke my way here for a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what the more recent past has felt like.
Okay, and I mean, that idea of resilience and holding it all together and what women always have to do. You quote, Charlotte quotes Marcus Aurelius in the book, that which obstructs the way.
A straight white man, yes.
Yes. So
she's very straight white man identified at the outset. And he was great.
Charlotte, yes.
He was, and I like Marcus too.
Marcus says, that which obstructs the way becomes the way. So what do we learn about resilience there? And I mean, this keeps coming up here.
Well, it reminds me, when you were talking about Lulu and you're talking about Lulu's quest, I thought, it's a flight that becomes a quest, right? And of course, she's invited, so there is a draw. She's been invited to the wedding, but it's kind of like she's fled the theater, right? And the flight and the self-exile, the escape becomes a quest. The problem becomes the redemption, right? The solution.
Yeah, these are big words, you know? These are very big words. I think what we're doing is telling a story. In a place...
Thanks for getting us back on track, Liz. This is
characters who you hope will seem real.
And that, you know what, that was wise. What you just said was wise. I knew we'd get there.
But I actually have an example of wisdom.
Oh, yes, please.
It's not mine at all. But it floored me when it happened. And my cousin, or Mark's cousin Jane, died in the fall. And it was a maid, an assisted death. And before she died, her son said to her, are there pieces of wisdom that you can pass on? You know, give me 3 pieces of wisdom. And she said, well, I'd have to think about that. And he said, no, just what comes into your mind right now. And she said, well, if I had to answer right now, I'd say, make art. That the world is full of turmoil, and making art gives you a path towards peace. The second thing was work with your hands, which is actually what Lulu does. Not that I'm only realizing this now, actually, because the book was already written when these pieces of wisdom floated across my path. But work with your hands, and each finger has its own little brain. And then the third thing was express love. So, I mean, this is, I was completely floored by this.
Wow, I think we all are completely floored by that.
That's perfect.
That is perfect. You know, and when Jane talks about that idea of expressing love, I mean, we see that in both books as well, the importance of these pivotal friendships. Nan and Lulu, Gwendolyn and Charlotte, just how transformative they are. Women's friendships, especially. And you know, I think as you get older, that also becomes so key. And sometimes more important than family in many ways, just those friendships with women. What role do they play, Liz, would you say? And why was that connection, and with its ups and downs between Nan and Lulu, so critical to Lulu being able to come back?
Yes, again, it wasn't really my idea. That I have a wonderful editor. We share this wonderful editor, Martha Kenya Forstner. And when I was working on Snow Road Station, at the beginning I thought, and for a long time I thought, that the main relationship would be between Lulu and Nan's estranged son. And this estranged son, Blake, failed to convince my editor. And in the end, I realized that I was really barking up the wrong tree, and that Martha was right in thinking that the life of the book really lay in that friendship between Nan and Lulu. And that clarified a lot of things for me, and it made the book a lot more coherent, to say nothing of shorter. So Nan and Lulu have been friends since childhood, and they were very important to each other as girls. Then there's a long period of distance where they, you grow up, you take a different path in life, you lose touch with, but they meet again at the lake. This is what happens in his whole life, the previous novel. But for the friendship to really resonate, I think there had to be a kind of test of the friendship. And that happens when Lulu is told, out of malice, something that Nan has said about her. And these things that happen, when someone you consider a very good friend says something harsh about you that you hear about third hand, then you think, all right, that's what my friend really thinks. When, in fact, it's one of the things she thinks, but it's certainly not everything. And so, wrestling with that, with accepting and not letting it define everything, the nasty thing that gets said, it is a real exercise in maturity, I think, which both Nan and Lulu have to take on if the friendship is to survive. Mm. But because the friendship is so important to them, they do that. Yeah.
Maturity and vulnerability, right? Nan was very vulnerable in how she explained that, why she said that, and Lulu very open in how she received it.
Yes. A lot of time has gone by, but they're able to do that. Yeah.
And I mean, also the friendship between Charlotte and Gwendolyn. I mean, the relationship with her father was pivotal in her early years, but when she finally makes that friend, she comes alive. It's so important.
Yes, that's a whole other aspect of her education. When her tutor arrives, he's about 19 years old. That's the awakening of the first idea of real real platonic fellow feeling. I would consider him to be her first.
That's true.
Her first friend, but not in the way that Gwen is, because you're absolutely right. That's all. I mean, that's a kid her own age. It's not an authority figure. It's not somebody who's a teacher. This is just eyeball to eyeball. And it's a revelation to her because she begins to scent the rich air of, I may not know what I do not know. What? You mean there's some, wow, I never even crossed my mind, it never crossed my mind even to ask these questions. So that's Gwendolyn, and she's a tremendous contrast. And there's a lot of fun there, right? And the idea that friendship would be valuable in and of itself, and that you could actually have it with another female, like as opposed to a superior sort of Apollonian male, is also a revelation to her. Yeah. And also Martha is a fabulous editor, and my book is a lot shorter too, because of her wise interventions. Yeah.
How much shorter? I want to know.
I don't know. Maybe.
So just 100 pages shorter?
Maybe about 112 pages.
Well, mine's 100
87.
shorter, and I never wrote 900 words,
Yeah.
900 pages.
Yeah.
How do you plan to write a book that long, that lengthy?
I
720 pages?
don't plan that. I knew that when I was entering into the world of the late Victorian period, I knew that I was entering Bronte country. I knew I was entering late 19th century fiction country. And you know what that's called nowadays? That's called a limited series. Right? And I know that the Victorians got the same gratification as we do now, watching 6 to 8 hours. And that's to say that I knew that there would be an unfolding. There are going to be secrets. There's going to be a quest for truth and identity. And that takes the story takes as long to unfold and reveal itself as it does. And working in that tradition, that was pretty predictable, that it was not going to be a slim volume, a slim Victorian volume. No, it was going to be comparable to my prototypes, to my inspiration. Yeah.
I'm keeping an eye on the time because we're going to take a short break soon, and then we'll come back with another reading and a chance for you to ask some questions. I did want to ask about some of the other women in the book. We have Clarissa Bell, Charlotte's aunt, who is difficult and mean. We have Miss Gourley, who is courageous and open. And then you also have Marie Bell, Charlotte's mother, who is very much a victim of the time in many ways. What do we learn about them? Why?
Charlotte's mother. Charlotte grows up knowing that her mother died in childbirth with her, and that her mother was a young Irish-American heiress who was shipped over to Europe and to make a splendid match, which she does, with an impecunious nobleman. So the American money and the British title. That was a not uncommon story. For me, writing a character like May, who is crazy about clothes, and like, you know the story, you know the song, I Enjoy Being a Girl? Okay, that's not my song. And all the frills and fur below it. Oh, I like so May. Oh, no, stop. But that was her passion, and that was her world. And I thought, I'm in it now. She is crazy about Charles Worth's dresses and Émile Pingat and this seafoam cuff and here's how these buttons go. And you stupid girl, don't stab me. If you stab me with that hat pin one more time. And of course, these gloves are very difficult to get on. They feel like love's first kiss. They are kid gloves, okay? So all of that, and all of her flirtatious ways and pretending she's not as smart as she is and making the men feel great and all of that. But especially her wardrobe. That was so hard. I did so much research to get that right so that the reader can just picture it, right? And hopefully it feels effortless for you. You just go, wow, she looks amazing. But I had to work so hard on that because it does not come naturally to me. So I had a bit of a sexist, scornful thing, like career lesbian. A lot of lesbians love dresses. I know. Okay, sorry. I get into trouble, and no one would really say that I'm that butch, even though I always hoped I would be. And all I am is 64 years old. But anyway, I gave my all to this, and I reckoned with my own sexism, and then I realized this is her power. This is her job. She is great at her job. She loves her job. This is where her power is, and this is the tragedy because she thinks it's power. She's forgotten. She has zero power. She's a woman. She's a wife. She is owned. She's a possession. Zero power. And when you crash in a party dress, you crash hard.
But then her contrast is Miss Gourley.
Yes, Miss Gurley, exactly.
Yes.
How is she not a lesbian? Isn't that amazing? She's straight, though. I mean, I knew that right away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Really? You thought she...
She could.
I suppose.
She could be the keeper of options open.
She could, but... yeah.
No?
Well, she would just because she's a good egg.
Yeah.
But no, she's straight. But she's one of those early 20th century feminists who establishes what in North America was called a settlement house. She has a refuge. She turns no one away. And she also, she will place children that are born there. If the young woman is in trouble, can't raise it, she will also procure abortions when the girl says, help me. So she is walking a very fine line. And she's an early feminist. And at a table full of glittering people, she's strident and not exactly making witty conversation. Yeah.
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 She gets the job done. Like she is just so, we love her. We love her.
Thank you.
Because of what she has done and the courage. Again, courage in how she's able to live.
And her
in
friendships, right? Her commitment to women is huge. And the clear-eyed way that she sees the power structures. Who's actually got the power? What kind of woman am I supposed to hate? Why? I'm supposed to be in competition with her. No, let's see past that. We're going to see past all of that nonsense. We're not going to fall for that, for the patriarchal constructs, basically.
Is that part of Lulu, Liz, would you say? She is not, she is not married. She has not followed traditional path for, not traditional, but a common path for women. Marriage and children and that type of life. What kind of a feminist is Lulu in that sense? Blazing her own trail, doing her own thing, and possibly having regrets about some of it.
Yes, she says at one point at the wedding, there's a wedding at the beginning, and she's talking to the unhappy groom, and says, what she says is, marriage is a risk I've never wanted to take. And that's actually a line I lifted from another cousin who didn't say that because she did marry, but she did speak in a kind of lamenting way about the risk of marriage, that she had taken the risk and wished she hadn't. So no great theoretical claims do I make for any of my characters, but Lulu is. I loved her deeply, and what I folded into Lulu was something that I have experienced firsthand time and time again recently, which is all of these older women who become, not older women, older people who become grandparents and absolutely fall in love with their grandchildren. Doesn't matter man or woman. They fall for their grandchildren with a kind of ecstasy that is astonishing. There's a baby who arrives on the scene later in the book, and it's a way or a vehicle for expressing love. This baby, yeah.
I did want to ask, because I know we have to go. There is one scene in the book that lingers. It is the humiliation that Lulu faces after the wedding. And I won't tell you what it is, but it is visceral. I felt it, and I found it upsetting, and that kind of lingers. But it also becomes her power and her way to kind of push back.
Even the score.
Yeah. Tell me about that, the decision to include that, and why that was important.
Well, you know, she is very, very vulnerable. This is something that, in reading Chekhov's plays and Chekhov's stories, but his plays especially, you see him have his characters awake at late hours because they can't sleep. And when you can't sleep and you're awake at 2 a.m, you're very, very vulnerable. And this is what happens. This is Lulu's condition. You know, she's not sleeping. She's tremendously worried about the play. As she runs away from the play, tremendously worried about whether or not she can go back and carry on. And I think the vulnerability is crucial. Now, remind me what you asked me.
That particular humiliation.
Yes, the humiliation.
Why?
So she finds herself in a situation after the wedding that she wouldn't probably be in if she weren't so tired. And at the same time, though, she is the kind of woman who does, although she won't risk getting married, she risks many, many other things. And every actor who's any good, and she is good, she's just not great, which is something she has to come to terms with, as most of us do. She's in that situation, you know, of being misjudging. She's sort of off her game, and lands herself in the trouble that I spoke of earlier.
Okay, she's off her game.
I think she is off her game.
Yeah.
In all sorts of ways. But this particular, it's an assault. It unmoors her even more. And so she's hanging there, you know, and then has to kind of gather herself up and find a way to proceed. Yeah. There's a wonderful line that in Happy Days, the play she's in, at the beginning of the second act, where Winnie says how changed she is now. How does it go? To have been always what I am, and so changed from what I was. To have been always what I am, and so changed from what I was. So within Lulu, there is this desire for change, but also, as interesting to me, is resistance to change. Yeah. And all of the characters in Snow Road Station have that to one degree or another. They change, and they resist. Yeah. They resist changing.
Right, but it is not the change, perhaps not the change that itself, but coming to terms with either not changing or changing. I mean, what I'm getting at is this realization that you're at a place where you might not feel that you are great, and you're never going to be great. Your whole life is working up to a place where you want to be great. I mean, we all want to be great, but you come to terms with being good. Now, have you either have ever felt that?
Or even mediocre.
Or even mediocre, and becoming okay with that. I mean, other people look and say, fantastic, of course you are both great. But do you struggle with that yourself?
They don't say it enough. I mean, you have to be a realist. I mean, you can't think. I mean, we fool ourselves, we delude ourselves. You know, you'll be writing at your desk and you'll think, my God, that is a great thing you just wrote. But then, you know, a couple of weeks later, you reread it and you think, well, no, it's not. Yes, you know, you do fool yourself all the time, and yet you have to be somewhat clear-headed about.
But you also have to believe that that's possible in order to take the leap and to be writing. Because
what's possible?
That what you're doing is important and potentially great.
Yeah.
It's a huge risk, because what do? What I think we do is we do this. We're just like, oh, is there something there? And from a little crumb, we're spinning lives and stories out of nothing, out of the air. And I don't believe that it's nothing. I do believe that it's consciousness. But we are having to take something that can't be seen, touched, smelt, tasted, and make it communicable and solid and complete and digestible, right? And shareable. And that's such a huge, I think it takes a huge amount of courage, actually.
Yeah. Well,
I think that's pretty great.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I think you're great. No, and we won't go down that road. What's the next question?
We went. I liked it. Thank you.
All right. On that note, with our great authors, why don't we take 10 minutes? We'll come back and we'll hear your questions, and we'll hear another reading. So let's take a 10-minute break. See you back in 10. Well, welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a good little break there. So why don't we do another short little reading, a couple more questions, and then we'll open the questions up to you. I mean, there's so much we haven't even covered. This amazing Fall on Your Knees play that was just at the NAC, right? Many of you probably saw it. You might have some specific questions about that, so start percolating. Anne Reid, would you like to get us started?
So I thought I'd read from the last page. Really. But don't worry, there's no spoilers. A patch of mist is on the east moor. I hear the swallow. It is calling me to a quiet place of dry bracken. If you are very still and can wait, they will come out to look at you. Eyes. Nature has so many of them. Eyes are one way of seeing. Nature has so many ways. Up on their hinds of many legs they stand, insects in their fine stitched suits, antennae inclined. Nature looking back at you. A rabbit, a fox, a bird alights, looking. Flight and pursuit are set aside. Even the dry grass is bending attentively with the ascent of a beetle. Nearby stirs a fringe of dwarf birch and willow, loosely woven as though nature were hinting how to make a basket. Nature is full of hints and warnings. Be so quiet they cannot mistake you for anything but attention, and they will come. They bring tidings of the dark pool that rises and sustains us all. Now the trees are bowing their crowns, they know. If you wish to see the face of God, be still, and God will come to look at you. Will you see that face if you rip off its mask? No, it will turn away. Will you see it if you pluck slowly at it, thread by loosed thread? No, it will unravel. If you wish to see God, let yourself be seen. The dark pool winks now into view in a bolster of mist. Eye of creation. Thank you.
Stunning. Emery, the moor, the bog, is almost it's its own character in this book in many ways. Why? What is it about that? The mystery of that, the magic of that.
Are we good? Oh, yeah. I've always been drawn to those landscapes. I think it's elemental, just at a cellular level. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. You know, when I was working on this book, I was pretty close to the end when I started to learn that when it started to enter mainstream consciousness, that awareness, that bogs are carbon sinks that exceed the importance of forests in terms of locking carbon away. And trees will fall over and they'll be reabsorbed, et cetera, and eaten. But bogs really hold that carbon forever if they're undisturbed. But we do like to build our airports, don't we? And do like tree planting for I don't know what. But that idea of wasteland has always appealed to me. Oh, it's just a bog. We're just going to drain it, make it pay, make it productive. That's what we're here to do, after all, isn't it? Actually, leave it alone. It's our mother. So these are very, very rich environments, which we are now understanding in terms of biodiversity. It's extraordinary. But for me, it really is just about the beauty of the bleakness, right? And knowing there's so much going on there. There is so much that you can't, as Charlotte starts to learn about what's going on, it reminds me of what a geologist said to me. I was on a bit of a research trip up into the Northwest Highlands, and I ended up in a van with a bunch of retired geologists. I basically crashed their party. And one of them gave me a loop to look through. He said, "Here," and he scooped up some sand. And he showed me, I looked through the loop, and it was just a million jillion little conch shells. And he said, "You do a doctorate in a teaspoon." And you'll do a doctorate in a teaspoon. You could do a doctorate in a teaspoon. So I actually did lift that, and I did use that in the book. But really, I thought that's what it is. Each and every one of those little plants, and also the chemical and biological mystery still that exists in, it's just mud, right? Oh no, it's a wonder. So the landscapes that drew me as a child, I was always drawn to wetlands. Like a lot of kids, I would want to come home like covered in burrs and soakers. It felt a little bit dangerous, and there's creatures there, and I returned to that. And yes, thank you for noting that the bog really is a character, because when I found what I believe to be the voice of the earth in this book, I understood that was the big push. That's what made a lot of it make sense, because I thought that is the most important voice in the book. It's a baseline, right? It's immanent, it's there, while all the humans are chattering and going about their quests, et cetera, but the land is there, and it's got something to tell us.
And you will see so many of these things in the book, so many themes and so many stories. There's Byrne, the groundsman, who is of the bog. He represents. You see some of the magic that he almost embodies, because he is so of that.
Yes, he knows its healing ways, and its harmful ways as well. But he's definitely a force for healing. Yeah. There's no question. Yeah.
Liz, would you like to read the next section for us?
Well, great minds think alike. Great minds think alike. You can hear me? Because I'm going to read from the end, too. I'll just say that Snow Road Station covers 6 months, from about March to October, from the sap running and flowing to the leaves turning. And it follows the seasons of Snow Road Station, just as Lulu is trying to figure out the last act of her life. That night, the rowdiness of the moon interrupted her wakeful thoughts. A rising moon thrusting itself through an opening in the trees and bathing her bedroom in near daylight. And so did the commotion of late-night arrivals, young people 1 bay over who played bongo drums and never went to bed. At dawn, the trees were full of birds again, moving, alighting, rustling, passing through. Mushrooms populated the path down to the water, dark butterscotch and lacquered. That morning she swam with the fallen leaves floating on the bay. It was cold, but not achingly cold. The quiet startled her, made her feel she should breathe it in and hold it inside herself and not forget. Walking back up the path, she paused to watch bouncing babies of golden light do somersaults in the topmost leaves, joyous bursts of color and movement. The bungalow sat in a field of vertical yellow, leafiness laddering up to the sky, airy and floating, and so delicate it looked almost Japanese. The leaves really did fall one by one. Each leaf had its own descent. In the evening, she went down to the water and gasped at the impossible far shore, the lime green of the grass at the water's edge, the godlike blending of colors in the trees above. Light seemed to be coming from deep within the leaves, as if the colors were being cooked in hazy fats, the haziness made not of air, but of leaves melting into the air. Up on the hilltop, the heroes of crimson and orange were baring their chests, stabbing themselves in the heart, tossing fistfuls of coins in the air. Such bravura performances, such scene stealers, such hams. All you have to do, she thought, is put yourself in the way of beauty. Put yourself into the incredible swing of it. And her mind moved through the whole dance, from sap to bud to shade, to these days of glory, these extravagant last acts, before the trees lost everything to the wind and the rain, and oncoming winter. Then for months on end, they would go naked, crayoned by snow, and then begin again. She had plans for Julie's garden, neglected in the past year. She would plant currant bushes and a plum tree, a cutting garden, cowslips, anemones. Yes, there was such a thing as progress. That this place, once the very hub of family tension, should have become so light and love saturated, and that she, at her advanced age, should have learned how to treasure it. Her brother Guy joined her on the dock for the sunset. It came in on crashing waves of red, so stupendous that he grinned and said, "This sailor's delighted." Lulu wrapped an arm around her brother, and they stood side by side, taking the red sky at night directly on the chin.
Just so beautiful and atmospheric and lyrical, and that's what you will experience reading this book. Liz, at one point, Lulu says, older women fall in love with rivers, gardens, houses, cottages, lakes, shedding their leafy, lovely, or unlovely earlier lives. Is that true? Do women fall in love with nature more? Older women, older sexy women fall in love with?
Yes.
Just confirming.
It is true. Yeah.
Why?
I
Why?
noticed that the first time I became aware of that, I was in my 30s. I had 2 small children. And I knew an older writer. We were living in New York then, and I knew this older writer who was in her 50s. And she'd found this little house in the country. And she, it was like falling in love with a dog. You know, it was falling in love with a place. It was without wounds. It was not complicated. And there was a line, I don't know where he wrote it, but Camus, Albert Camus wrote somewhere about a man coming back from the war, a veteran, who cured himself by contemplating a landscape. And I think, in my own mind, I think this vet, this damaged veteran, probably had some childhood association with that landscape, as Anne-Marie has with Scotland. Me too, actually, if you want to go back far enough. And it was so not just any landscape, but some landscape that has meaning for you is curative, I think.
Curative, absolutely, yeah. And the curative power of nature to begin with, and we see that in the bog.
It's interesting that both our books end with that. Anyway, I'm not going to try to improvise an essay, but it's really striking. It's interesting. Yes.
Okay, so that we have enough time for signing of books, let's take a couple of questions, Helen. If we could get a mic out there. I'm sure there are way more questions than we have time for. So why don't we aim for 2 or 3? Who's got short, crisp questions? Oh, come on now. Oh, don't play shy now. I know you have questions. Here comes Elaine. Who's got one?
Short.
Oh, there's Elena.
Hello.
Check.
Okay, no, I don't need it. And I'm not sick, I just don't want to be. But I'm not going to use this right now so you can hear me. But, okay. It was a great sound all night, by the way, until this moment. But very selfish question. I've had the honor and privilege to produce all 3 of you on stage at something called WritersFete Lit, very long time ago, 16 years ago. 16 years. 16 years ago for MacDonald, and 19 years ago for Elizabeth Hay, and Lucy has my heart. Okay, that's enough fangirling or fan-diking, however you want to think about it. Here's my selfish question. What I did was I created a literary event, and this is a beautiful, exquisite event. Thank you so much for this.
Woo-hoo.
But I want to say I created an event that the whole purpose and premise of the event I created was to take these kind of nights or literary moments where we could hear iconic Canadian female writers read out of the dimly lit cafes and theaters and out onto the street in a free kind of atmosphere and environment. And my selfish question was, have you ever, since WritersFete Lit, have you ever, either of you, read outside at an outdoor festival or event since then? Very selfish, I said that at the start.
Thanks, Elena.
I think Eden Mills.
Eden Mills would be the one.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know Woody Point in Newfoundland? They have a festival.
Woody Point. I was inside, though, for Woody Point.
Well, it's Woody Point. It is inside, but then they have, what is it called? Writers in the Wild. And you go out and follow a path, and you come upon a writer, and then you go further, and you come upon another writer. These
way.
poor, besotted writers waiting for an audience to arrive.
A literary scavenger hunt. And we miss Westfest, by the way, Elena. We miss it so much. It's fantastic. Thank you for that. Okay, who else has a question? There's one on this side. There's one over here. Len? A couple over here.
Hello, I hope you don't hate this question. I'm sure you've had it before, but I'm curious about how you come up with these wonderful stories. If you start with a character that you have fallen in love with, or if you have a story to tell, or a lesson you want to teach us. So what's the speck of the idea that starts you off? Or maybe you just can't help but write.
It's a great question.
After you, Alphonse. Okay. I tend to find out what the story is by writing. I write my way into the characters and the voices, and the story starts to emerge. And, knowing where and when, I think setting, and then that first point of view that is inhabiting that setting, that's really where I begin. And I find out what the story is by writing it. And it's an intuitive way to work. And I think it's probably, I know it's a difficult way to work because it's hard. But I liken it to creating, the vital organs, the soft tissues, the viscera, etc., and then putting in the skeleton. And that's hard. Because structure and plotting and sequence are, for me, extraordinarily important, especially if I want to create an immersive experience for the reader, right? But for me, I will find out what that story is, and then it's like, okay, there's a pulse. It's alive. And I'll work very, very patiently, very diligently to learn more and more and more and more about where this is, who are these people, what's driving them, what has happened, what is happening, where are they going, what are they wondering. I always begin with drawing a picture, actually, and I tend to interrogate that picture.
What do you mean? What kind of a picture do you draw?
I actually draw like a person and a place or an object. And
what kind of object would you draw?
well, for example, with this book, I drew the landscape, the rippling kind of moorland, and then a figure in the foreground. And I'm no great shakes as a visual artist, but I did get through the early grades of school by cartooning. But this young person, don't know if it's a girl or a boy, dressed in kind of Byronic 19th century garb, and they're looking out on this vast moorland. And then I added on the horizon a baronial mansion, kind of, and I knew I was in Gothic country. And then there was a caption. It was, I had heard something out on the fen, ... So I thought, I need to know who this young person is, and I need to know what they heard. And why does the surface of the earth look like waves that have been, stilled by the wave of a wand? Something is coming toward that house. The land has truth in it, and it's making its way toward that creepy old mansion. And there's this young person who's like going to tell us the story, is going to actually reveal the truth. So that's where that started. But there was a lot of work to do to find the answers, right? Yeah. Wow. But the rest of it is a mystery. I don't know where ideas come from. My ideas about where ideas come from all sound really esoteric and fake and flaky.
Liz, how about you?
Well, I too discover the story as I work on it, as I write it. But I sure don't draw anything. I wish I could and did. I think in my case, maybe not so much with Snow Road Station, actually, but with other books, there's been a situation. I can have a place and a relationship in mind, two sisters, for instance, and the I say situation. I think there's a kind of congestion inside that's a little tense and just needs to be explored or understood better. And so, well, if I go back to A Student of Weather, which is easier to talk about in some ways, which was my first novel, I wanted to explore two sisters, and I had them fall in love with the same man. So now I've never been in that situation, being a sister falling in love with the same man, but I certainly have a sister, and have thought a fair bit about sisters and the pecking order in a family and so on. So again, it's not. I'm not being very articulate, I know, but as I say, there's a kind of need that's a congestion. It's inarticulate, and it needs a situation to move forward, and a relationship between a couple of people and a place. And then if you have those few ingredients, you can start. And I wrote a few novels, and I was so tired of never knowing what I was doing that I decided I would find the ending first, and then I'd know where I was going. And I can't remember which one I did that with. I think that might have been Alone with the Classroom. I decided where the book would end up, and then I'd have this beacon, and I would head toward the beacon, and I'd not lose my way. But it wasn't like that at all. You can have the ending, but you still have to get there, and it's so confusing.
Yeah, it really is.
And you flounder
really is.
and flounder.
It's mostly I find writing is mostly floundering. Yeah, it is. It's really hard to talk about it, too.
Without sounding pretty stupid, really.
Yep.
Not that you sounded stupid.
No, I sounded...
You sounded
no.
admirably clear.
No, I whipped that out. I had that in my pocket. That's all that was.
You both sound great. Thank you for that question. Ellen, do we have time for a couple more? Yes. Okay, great.
Hello. I was very moved by a quote that I wrote down of yours, Anne-Marie. I'd just like to read it. And it occurred to me that memory is shaped not merely by events and their retention, but also by the telling and by the listening. Thereby, too, is shaped the future. And I just thought that was such a powerful and simply put beautiful truth in terms of relationships, and how by telling each other our stories that we keep each other healthy and alive and find meaning amongst ourselves. So I just want to thank you both for telling your story.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Okay, now the questions are coming like wildfire. Right there, right there.
Hi.
Oh, you right here. Yep.
It's a short question, but I'm so curious if you are writers who read while you're generating, while you're creating. Who are some of the authors that you turn to, that you know, for different things in your process? Are they different every project, or is there like a particular author out there, a particular writer out there that you feel is someone you always lean on for your projects?
I certainly read as I write. And in fact, I think they go hand in glove. And that was something I learned a long time ago, although perhaps it took a while to sink in. When I worked in radio many years ago, I would, when I was working for Sunday Morning, I'd do radio documentaries, which required a certain amount of writing, the continuity. And there was one time when I just seized up and I couldn't, it was like an examination question you don't know how to answer. I just seized up. And there was a very kind producer working for the same program, Marie Natanzin, who saw my predicament and brought over a magazine. And she said, you know, when I have trouble writing, I read something. And I think what happens, and it helped, reading someone else's flow of thought takes your mind off yourself enough for your brain to unfreeze, and then your own thoughts start to flow again. So I'm not the kind of person who says, I'm writing a novel, oh, well, I can't read any novels or I might be influenced. Bring on the influence as far as I'm concerned. And in terms of who I lean on, you know, it does change. There's no particular hard and firm to this. There's for a long time, I would turn to Disgrace. You know that novel by Coetzee, which and I would just read a page or two. I find his writing in that book in particular it's very simple and clear, but electrifying and without any, it's just terrific writing. So that was nice company, you know, nice company. And I also like to read poetry, which is not impenetrable poetry, of course, penetrable poetry. But that too, it frees your mind, and your thoughts start to flow, and so does your sense of language. Yeah.
Great. When I'm writing, I tend not to read fiction, and I think it's not because I'm concerned about the influence. I'm with you on that. It's more just what my brain is hungry for. I read a lot of nonfiction when I'm working, and a lot of it is research-oriented, and then some of it is just stuff that I have an appetite for. I am hungry for science and history and medicine and all that sort of stuff. Yes, I'm pretty voracious with the nonfiction when I'm writing fiction. And upon whom do I lean? I think there's never been a book or a play that I've ever worked on where I haven't picked up one of Northrop Frye's books and reread at least a chunk, because I find him good company. He loved literature, and
give us a couple of titles.
Well, for example, his Shakespeare book, what's it called? Northrop Frye on Shakespeare, probably. I know there's an actual title, but that you would easily find it for that. So that was really important.
But what you get from there is an understanding of pattern and structure.
Exactly. And that's where I feel like I turn to Northrop Frye so that he'll remind me what it is that I do. What am I doing again? Oh, that's what I'm doing. Thank you for actually tracing a pattern. And what did he say? You know, history is what happened, literature is what happens. There are a couple of other quotes where he said, you know, the quest for identity, there is the only story. There's one story, and it's the quest for identity. And then he said, there is another one, but I'm not going to tell you what that is. I think I might be making up that last word. But yes, I recognized what I do, and I find it just nourishing and encouraging. And then I realized, oh, I write romances. I write capital R, like, and I don't mean the romantic period, and I don't mean romance novels. I mean the structure of your protagonists or protagonists start at a place in life which is actually, oh, it's okay. Or maybe even they think it's pretty great, and then they go crash. And then comes the journey back to restoration, where actually they have more at the end than they had at the beginning. Now, a lot of people have said that I don't have a lot of happy endings. This actually does have a bona fide happy ending, I think. But for me, a happy ending is when somebody emerges to tell the story and to pass it forward. Now, a lot of people don't think that's absolutely joyous, but I do. I think that's a happy ending for me. But really the shape of romance, where you go from here to there to, oh, up there. So it contains tragedy and it contains comedy. And it has a capacious embrace or a reach. It's a big container. And I realize that's, Winter's Tale is like that, the Shakespeare play. That sort of thing. That's what I turn to.
I just want to add one little thing that I could say about reading and writing, which is that when you're writing, you want to read things that make you feel like writing. Mm. You don't want to read something that makes you feel like you're a flop. So I don't read the bestsellers, unless, of course, it's Anne-Marie. I avoid the bestsellers until they've worn off a little bit, and I might read them a few years hence. But I don't want to read things that make me so jealous I can't write.
I'm with you on that. Yeah. It's true. It's a very vulnerable place. It's like when you're just making stuff up, and somebody else has already got it, as if it was easy for other people, which we know it isn't, but still.
And Liz, what was the book you mentioned? Disgrace? I don't know the book.
Disgrace. Okay. It's already, 20 years old, maybe?
Okay.
By James Coetzee, the South African writer.
Yes.
And I think it probably won the Booker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you both for that.
And it's just it's great writing, but it's also just a powerful book.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that, Northern Fry. More of that. Okay. 2 more questions. Okay. 2 more questions. Like the shortest ever questions.
But we give very long answers.
Yeah,
Do you notice that?
That's true. I wasn't gonna bring that up, but great answers.
Hi, thanks for you're both being so transparent. It's awesome. I'm wondering if you can both speak to your writing process a little bit, and if you have any weird rituals.
Oh, I think Anne-Marie has weird rituals.
There's nothing weirder than Liz's rituals, though, from what I hear. Rituals. Oh, goodness. I'd have to think about that one. Yeah, the process, I just sort of think the more prosaic, the better, right? Just try to start pretty much the same time every day. Try to be consistent. Knowing ending the writing day is at least as important as starting on time. Finishing on time is equally important.
Finishing when and what?
Finishing a work day.
But what's your work day?
I would say just broad strokes. A normal work day is 5 hours of actual writing. And if I can start, oh, well, like at 8 or 9 in the morning, I'm really happy. And I think my theater background will never permit me to be an author that is at their desk working at 6 in the morning. I wish I could be such a lark, but I think that'll never happen.
And how do you fit in the research? I mean, you did, as you say, massive amounts of research. So if you do 5 hours of writing a day, then when do you do the
I
research?
will also sometimes just say, okay, now I'm just delving. I'm just researching. That's
The 5 hours.
No, but for much probably longer days. Actual writing, 5 hours. I find that's plenty of writing to do in a day. Research is another. That can be longer hours, more immersive, and obviously, no one day is like any other day. And I can be writing, and I'll need to know something, and I'll have to tie myself to the mast and say, you know that you must not get too distracted. You have to table this question. Can you move forward without answering that question right now? Then you must. So those are the forms of discipline that I find the most challenging. Rituals? Do you mean like sports, like athletes have rituals and stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Like if you're not feeling it, if you do anything to sort of move from like the secretarial world into the sacramental and.
I see. A walk is really important. Is really good. Take a walk.
Liz, how about you?
I thought you'd be weirder.
I'm so sorry. Honestly, like a lot of writers, it's really boring, right, from the outside. Like nothing's happening here. It's nothing to see here.
Well, I think 5 hours of writing a day is astonishing.
Do you think that's a long day? Yeah.
Of writing, yeah. Boy, no, I feel like
But she writes a lot of words.
Harry, after he met Megan, I've got to up my game. But I do. I'm disciplined in the sense that I'm at my desk a lot, and I like to be there. But I'm not. Never productive in that way of sitting down and just writing and writing. I revise.
Oh yeah, that's mostly what it is rewriting.
Okay, well then now I don't have to up my game so much.
No. This is just like weltering through floundering through the welter, right? Just yeah. Oh no, it's not like, oh, I shall achieve this today.
It's not so many pages a day then.
No, especially not in the early days. I'm just thinking, I just have to give my imagination a chance, and it's not until the final chunk of work that I actually have something that's an it, and I can go, okay, I'm going right through now from the beginning. I'm trying to organize this big shaggy beast. Can I get through this number of pages, today? But that happens years after I start. It's mostly just trying to go through the undergrowth.
Such fantastic answers, but long answers, I find. Long answers. Okay, Helen, one more. That's all we have time for. Right over here. I think that's Susan. She's had her hand up for a while. Yeah. Can you just yell it out?
Yeah, I can yell it out. My question is about the shadowy Martha. I was shocked when Elizabeth said that Martha killed off Blake. So I'm just wondering how much radical surgery do you guys go through in dealing with editors, and at what point do you resist?
Did you hear this? Okay, Martha didn't kill off Blake. No, Blake's is still there. He's in the book. He's curtailed substantially.
She curbed Blake. Yeah. Oh, so it's funny, the shadowy Martha. Yeah, Martha was, she's a very fine editor, and you know what you want in an editor is a great reader, right? Where is your editor really along? And it's like they're scenting the pulse, it's alive, right? They're following that scent. And when when they sort of tell you that the scent's gone cold here, right? And we're spending a long time here. Or, oh, that note, I'm going to switch metaphors, that note is just a bit off. I just don't buy it from that character. Wouldn't they be thinking this and feeling that? So there's a tonality that an editor can really influence. And I know that in drawing the character of May, I remember a conversation I had with Martha, and it very much nudged me onto, it defined a certain aspect of that character, and it was really freeing. It was great. And do editors never, I don't think in real life, they don't sweep in and say, you need to cut this, and it never really happens that way, at least not in my experience. It's a conversation. And if you trust your editor and you love them as your first all-important, as your most important reader, then you want to keep them engaged with the story. And you trust them as a touchstone of where's the scent, where's the pulse, are we still on track, right?
Okay, thank you for that question. And thank you for all the questions. I know that there are a ton more, but we're going to leave it there. We're already way over time for very good reason. It's just been such a magical evening, and we've been really lucky to have Anne-Marie MacDonald, Liz Hay with us tonight. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Lucy, thank you. When Lucy, just a few days ago, wrote me a note saying how she loved the books, and the questions you asked Lucy today brought out the best, I think, of Elizabeth and Anne-Marie, and made us discover their books, helped us reflect, and you did it with such insight and great warmth. Thank you very much. And Anne-Marie and Elizabeth, thank you you spoke of courage earlier on. I think writers and authors are so incredibly courageous in giving of themselves and expressing of themselves. Tonight you gave us a lot to reflect upon. The show was live streamed, so you can go back to it, because I think there's so much that we want to go back to and think about. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. Thank you. And now I'd like to invite you. I think many of you have already bought books, but there's still some more. And Anne-Marie and Elizabeth will be at the book table signing for a while. And thanks to you, our community, for making us possible. Thank you so much for coming this evening. Thank you.